Hello and welcome to the Business Octopus live stream. I am joined here with Michael Fox from Action Advisory, here to talk about what a process is and why you need one. Welcome, Michael. How are you going?
Well, thank you, Avon. Thank you for having me.
No problems at all. All right. So, I know that obviously can't escape the name call out, Michael Fox. You're a famous actor.
I am. The J is there. Don't worry about that. So I sometimes get Marty from my friends that I don't appreciate, but that's okay.
Yes, true, Marty McFly.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I know what it is to have a name that drags attention, so all good. So actually, funny story. Actually, I when I go to networking events to get as a mnemonic to remind people, I say hello, Avon like a makeup, and then people remember. But when I'm doing networking in India, I actually have to change it to the bicycle because there's a brand of bicycle, but no one uses or is familiar with the makeup. So I go, hi,
there you
Avon
go.
like the bicycle.
Like the bicycle. Just don't get them confused. People won't.
Correct. Yes. Anyway, well, it's great to have you. And you can see along the bottom, we've got the first question here. So why do small businesses suck at processes? But before we get into that, your background, now you are a business process specialist. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so every business has processes. It's made up of a series of processes. I've had a background in consulting and process management for a little while now. And I've got a huge passion for just bringing that enterprise level capability down to the small and medium guys who wouldn't normally be able to afford it. So, we bring the tools, we invite you in, you can collaborate with us, we do process design. It's all about trying to get that initial visibility and then helping you to make good decisions around how to improve and that sort of thing. So, a process is everything, every little step that leads to an outcome. And what small businesses, or what every business wants, is a good outcome. So whether that be for their people or for their customers, etc. So
yeah, I think sometimes they blur the lines on the fact that they just go, business is everything and I do everything.
And I do everything.
And they don't realize that, well, actually, like a car goes from here to there, but then there's your radiator, which is the cooling system. Then you've got the aircon system. Then you've got the braking system. Then you've got the exhaust system. Yeah. So
if one part breaks, it starts to, reverberate throughout the entire vehicle, and other parts start to break. Business is very much the same. You need to make sure that your performance is good.
Absolutely. So the question: why do small businesses suck at processes?
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot in my content and other podcasts. It is businesses primarily focus on growth. You were saying before that you've just acquired a new customer today. You're in growth phase, right? You're out there, you're getting more work, and how the work happens behind is not necessarily efficient yet. Is because your focus is on growth. So what a lot of small businesses, they don't focus on how they're running their processes. They build them as they go, which is not the wrong thing to do. But there is often no focus or planning on what the process should be. So therefore, they begin to suck at it, and they don't improve them as the business grows.
I think sometimes a lot of particularly small business, it might be like experimenting or trying new things, and it becomes more of like a sample bias of I haven't done this enough to know whether or not this is worthwhile. I like you can kind of go on threes. Like once is whatever, second times is a coincidence, third time is a trend. Now, like you might have to sell that product 3 times to go, all right, well, this is something that's actually wanted. The first few times was luck. Now there's a pattern here. Let's start to establish some systems.
That's right. That's right.
And one of the first things I try to do is like, how do I build for future me or the next person in line who's going to go and do the task that I just did? So I think a change of process or a change of approach could be useful.
Yep. I like to thank past me. So past Michael has a lot of input into what future Michael does and what our future team does. I because I'm documenting things, because I practice what I preach, and I document and I plan around what things should look like, even if we're not doing it yet. I often go, I actually thank past Michael for planning this, because it's way easier to execute when you've planned what you want to do.
I did that the other day. I got out the fridge and I thanked my younger self for making pizza the night before. There's no process in that, but I like to
No,
thank my
but you're
younger self.
prepped. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was good.
Exactly. And because you've planned, you get to the outcome faster. Like the outcome that you wanted was to get fed, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that brings us on to our next one. What's the benefits of having a process? And we kind of covered a little bit, but I think we can go into a little bit more detail. In particular, we kind of talked about the pizza scenario, but what about when you've got a team?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I've been in organizations where you have, 50 people of the same role who do it, 47 or 72 different ways. I think that regardless of how documented or well understood your process is, the reality is you have a process. And sometimes it's just severely broken. There's no consistency, etc. So I think it's about getting on the same page. What is it that we're actually doing here? Bring your people together and plan out. Hey, how does this actually work? Like, how are we delivering to the customer, or how are we getting to the outcome that we plan?
On that, like, you kind of raise a good point of like knowledge management, where if I can write all the documents in the world, but then I have a whole bunch of assumed knowledge. It's not until I put it in front of someone else that they go, I don't understand this. I have a gap of knowledge on that and that. And then when you combine it with them and they go, actually, I think it would be better if you did this bit here and that bit there. That kind of like socializing the knowledge really helps to create a better written document.
Oh, 100%. So, I'm very hierarchical and structured about how I document processes. So a lot of businesses or small businesses jump straight to knowledge and they have all their articles in an intranet. I actually string them together on the process models. So the process model defines the scope for what every single piece of knowledge should be. And that way you can just flow from one to the next, and you can actually integrate that into a workflow engine or, something with your CRMs, et cetera, later on. So it really does help structure out what that's supposed to be. I like to refer to it as the democratization of knowledge. We want to be able to bring people in and have an equal standing in terms of where they're at and what they know about how to execute. Any gaps in knowledge leads to inefficiency. So you were talking before we went live around, your team asking you questions, and that when they ask you questions, you're documenting what they're asking you so they don't have to answer, so they don't have to ask again. It's also because it's also so you don't have to answer again. And we think about all the time that's drained every day with answering questions that could be self-served. So your people need to know where the knowledge is, where to find it, how to self-serve.
And that's kind of very reactive, and I've run into it in the last few weeks because I've written about 20 articles in the last 20 days, one a day. And the thing I come up with is that maybe the words that I use to explain something might be different to what they use. And so, I use a help desk software to get my team to basically search through articles, but then I can look for failed keywords. So when someone searches for something and it doesn't come up, then that's something I can use to tag an existing article using the correct terminology or something like that. It's like when people are in Google, they're not searching for, I can't think of a good example, but like insert technical term here. They're just like the slang word for it or just the basic, very shorthand. I'm going to search with 2 words because I can't be bothered writing a full sentence.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So you need to be able to link up your ecosystem pretty well. There are tools are a dime a dozen these days. You could be in 1,000 of them, but what you really need is to make sure the people that are doing the work have the access to the information they need. That is a good process. A good process is right information with the right person at the right time. And what you need to be doing is you need to be surfacing the information to the person as they do the job. So even if they don't need it at the very time, at least it's there. Really, at the end of the day, your people shouldn't be trying to search through an intranet somewhere. That's the reason why the intranet becomes some terrible backwater of outdated documentation, is because no one ever goes there. It's quicker to ask, Avon, I've got a problem. It's quicker to ask.
I did this the other day where you create like a blueprint process and you got all these screens and they ask these questions and then those questions. And then if that goes down that line and if it goes down this line. But what you're saying, and it like embedding the knowledge link in that stage with the description to go, this is how this process runs, this is why you need to do it, and here's an article for more information. And then when you go to the article, it goes, here's related article X, Y, and Z, just in case something didn't fit that exact scenario that we said that this is what it's going to be like.
So that's a concept that I've been working on now with some technology partners, is around embedding within workflow engines your knowledge articles. It's not just about entering data on a form. It's about ensuring that the person knows how to ask the questions to get that data, that they know, or if it's a creative task, that they're inspired to be able to do that activity. If you're working with a website designer, they're not entering stuff in on a form, but they might want to go and look at previous case studies or design aspects and elements and things. They should be there within the task, ready to access, not going, oh, how do I self-serve, or where do I go to find this information?
Go dig through 50 documents.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't like seeing things in documents. Like, documents are good to publish or collaborate on, but then they need to have a usable home that then can be searchable.
Yep.
So I think we kind of covered it as well, but we had a little note there about like less internal questions. Do you have any like metrics around like how a knowledge base can help with reducing the amount of internal questions?
Yeah, I did some math on this the other day. If you've got a team of around 20 people, by giving them access to knowledge that they need when they need it, could save you 50 grand worth of productivity a year.
That's certainly worth the investment.
So if you could implement something at even $1,000 a month, you're well ahead in terms of productivity, right? And it's not just your team's productivity; it's yours.
There are free tools out there, and I am usually very hesitant when someone goes, "Oh, I use this free thing off the shelf," because usually that means they've got this containerized thing over there that's completely separate from the rest of their systems. It's not like stitched into their everyday. But I think, like if all organizations, and maybe this is a hat that business owner wears or should wear to begin with, and then evolve out of that, but a knowledge manager role, like a person who's responsible, because, I've seen it before, and I've got the team to write articles. Some of them write something that's completely different to the way I would do it, or to completely different format, or maybe they've run it through ChatGPT. And I had one guy who was really keen but then he just started replicating all the stuff that was searchable elsewhere. Like, you want to Google, certain things. Like, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to put our very specific set of circumstances on a page that is relevant to us. And it might reference external articles and external things that have more detail on it that we don't have to reinvent.
That's so right. And I think, going back to the democratization of knowledge, it's not just a key person who should be responsible for documenting knowledge. It should be just about anyone. If they find that something's out of date, they should be empowered to make a change. Even if you have a QA step where it's, hey, I updated this article, can you just give it a quick check? That's way better than just letting it go out of date, or because otherwise you end up with a single point of failure.
Well, that's kind of based in like the ISO 9001 quality assurance policy, is that you do have someone reviewing and someone signing off. Could be a department manager, could be the overall owner or something like that. But like having that capability to expire it at a set date, because maybe 12 months. It's check.
Exactly. There's verification date. Yep.
I did a podcast with Steve Baxter, and he said they had a mantra of follow the process and improve the process. Otherwise, you don't have a job. So that was pretty harsh. But I think if you're going to get, particularly in we work in CRM, so it's a very, brain power intensive, and you can only have a certain bandwidth because you're dealing with very complex scenarios. And so to be able to step back from certain activities, or to be able to hand off certain activities, really, really important to be able to have, some documentation or diagrams and things like that. So I'm a big fan of using video, and, but one thing I find is that video is not searchable. Not online. When
unless you have a transcript. Yeah.
Well, you don't necessarily have to have like the full transcript, but at least, put a summary of maybe tags, dot points. This is what is included in this video. And you need to be aware that, follow step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Watch the video for more.
Yep. Yeah. I've started basically recording everything I do. So, it's hey, I'm just doing this quick task that I don't want to do forever. Maybe
Mm,
I want a VA or someone to take over or a
mm.
bookkeeper. Here's how I reconcile my accounts.
Well, that's it. Like when you
This is
hire that first person, you're already at 110%. So you can't then spend another 10-20% training somebody else.
exactly. And it costs you basically nothing to record a video of what you're doing. Right. So,
Mm,
and because it's internal, you're not broadcasting it to the whole world. And if it's not usable, just delete it. But
mm,
if you have a whole hour session where you've done a series of tasks within a workflow,
mm.
you can literally, when onboarding a new person, you can sit down and go, is there anything in this video that you think you can do? Because now you're delegating and making it more beneficial of your time, and you're making this other person more useful, and you're trusting this other person with more work.
Well, I think that kind of stems well into our next question, which what if I've got a system and it's not working?
Mm.
So yeah, what do you do? Like if
Yeah.
let's say I've got some systems in place and it's just not happening. The team aren't
Yep.
doing it. The results aren't coming through. I've invested all this time in creating a system. How do I fix that?
Yeah, I think it's often coming back to what you believe the root cause to be and do some investigation, right? With my customers, we've already documented the process, so it's very easy to go through the process to try to figure out where problems might be.
Mm,
I've experienced this with a customer recently. She's a general manager who used to do the purchasing and receiving in and all that sort of stuff.
yep.
They have now 3 people doing different roles within those sets of processes.
Mm,
And she's like, why isn't this working? My system was really good. And it's like, you communicate perfectly with you.
yes.
3 people communicate imperfectly with each other. So,
Mm,
like, there's a breakdown in terms of, information transmission or whatever it is that's going on between these different people. We need to
mm,
be able to smooth out and provide good training around, what it is that this system is actually supposed to do and how it's
yeah.
supposed to operate. So, if it's not working, one, it might be out of date, or it might just be fundamentally broken, and you need to revisit what your process actually is and the information and knowledge that actually goes into it.
And what about the people side?
Mm. It's huge. I mean, we don't have systems without people. So,
But
you
like
know,
so, like because I mean, if you've got systems and then you've got people, but the people aren't using the systems, obviously there's a
mm,
performance gap there. How do
yeah.
you? What's your suggestions around getting people to use the systems?
Well, education and training is first and foremost, and there needs to be good input when you're building the system. You
Mm,
can't just impose systems on people. It's like dropping a brick on people's heads.
mm,
Change is heavy, so you either want to do it in pellet-sized bits, and we'll come back to that in our discussion about continuous improvement. Um, but you want to be able to give people just small little changes at a time, not
mm,
dropping new systems and things in that they have had no input into how they're supposed to work, etc. People
mm,
come back with, people have heaps of knowledge about how to do specific tasks. I think they should be utilized in actually designing systems that actually work. You
mm,
know, um, so there are no systems without people. Systems are like the cogs, but people are the heartbeat of a business. So
Well,
you need to make sure that they're taken on that journey in terms of managing
well,
that
now
change.
people are trying to throw like AI in the mix, and that's never going to do everything because what if someone's got to go walk over there, put the kettle on? I mean, yeah, I mean that's not the best example, but there's some manual step in between, and you can't always go and invest. And if
Yeah,
you haven't implemented the systems and tech or the robot, you haven't bought a robot
yeah,
5,000 to do that job. Somewhere in the middle, someone's going to have to do it manually, and
that's right.
particularly for brand new things. I mean, ideally when you've repeated something 1,000 times, but you got to get in there and just test it, and then you can
Yeah.
automate it.
And I would say, Avon, when you've done a CRM implementation,
Mm,
no two implementations have been the same, right? So
mm,
you need people to problem solve. It's not something that's just you can just ask a bot about and hope to get a good answer. There are
mm,
bespoke, complex things in every single implementation that you need to take into account. People are really good at solving problems and innovating. So,
mm,
like, let's try to maximize the time that our people can problem solve and innovate and serve the customer, do human things rather
mm.
than doing the
Data
menial
entry.
administrative things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think, carrot and stick, when you're trying to incentivize a behavior, yeah, you could probably penalize someone for not using the system, but that's probably going to use a bad taste in their mouth. Or you could incentivize them to, when they complete that process the way they were supposed to, give them a gift voucher or, take the team out to dinner when you've successfully done it for a month or something like that. Is that something you advocate for, or have you got any other ideas?
Yeah, I think it's just about people often respond negatively when they don't understand why something is happening.
Mm,
So, um, I'm a huge advocate of just treating people like adults. So, be transparent about why you might be implementing a certain system.
mm,
It's, hey, we believe this is important because, and
mm,
we want to be able to provide you support in your job by doing whatever it is. I think being proactive is way, way better and way easier in the longer term than being
mm.
reactive. It's like, oh, I implemented this new system and 5 staff left. Why? It's because you went on the
Yeah,
front foot.
yeah.
So,
So I think we've kind of half answered this next one as well, but we'll go in there. What can we do to improve our processes? So we've sort of talked about having, being able to go through the chain, identify where that problem is. We talked about if the systems aren't working, that we need to, get the team involved. There's that change management side, but when you're the business owner, you're like really, really close to the problem. So
yeah.
how do you get out of your own way?
Uh, I'm quite logical, right? So I like to come back to, is this actually worth it or not? Like
Mm,
that's really when we talk about improving a process, there are times where it doesn't make logical sense to do it.
mm,
So, with my customers, what we do is when we have an improvement opportunity, because we know the current state, we have a version of a future state that we could move to. We actually quantify what the benefit is of what the change
mm,
is, right? So it's like, oh, this, if you're looking at knowledge management, for example, that we are talking about before, we have a $50,000 opportunity this year. Does it make sense to do it? It's
mm,
information in front of a business owner or an executive where they can actually make good decisions. I think too many times we end up going, "Oh, we're just making gut feelings, and we're taking on this qualitative information from our team, but
mm,
it's not exactly information that might be particularly helpful." So I think it's really good just to look at that current state, figure out what your next state is going to be like, know what the difference is, consider whether it's important, consider whether it's worth it, and then go through. I think, when you do this, it actually makes the ROI discussion like black and white almost.
mm,
It's like, I know that I'm getting a 30% ROI out of this improvement. I know it's worth it.
mm.
Oh, I'm making a loss on this in the first 2 years. I've got to make a decision about whether that's worth it if my short term goals are growth, because you might not do
Well,
it. You know,
well, that's it. Like sometimes it's not always an ROI problem. Sometimes it's you might be paying a lot of money because there's some other issues that are like a roadblock. Like for example, we spoke with a client today. They have some legacy platform, and it was great. It's been great for years, but it's the code base is aging.
yep,
It's not being updated. What it sits on is no longer being supported. They
yep.
spent a lot of money moving it into a new system, but then there's a lot of gaps and things that it doesn't do. So,
Mhm.
excuse me, they
Right.
spent a bit of money updating the system,
Mm,
and now they're in this new process.
mm.
They can't actually get all the features that they need. They can't they spent all this money doing something amazing, going down this pathway, but didn't have any kind of like future scalability plan or future kind of
Yeah,
architecture and growth and development plan. So
yeah,
they solved the problem they had then, but now they've got new
then
problems, and now there's new
exactly.
technologies available. So
Yeah, and I think
I think,
that's why it's so important to have a roadmap,
mm,
right?
mm,
Is you have a forecast about where you want to go, and the
mm,
specific little improvements along the way don't matter so much at a roadmap level, but at least you have
mm,
direction about where you want to go. It automatically will filter off improvement opportunities that don't meet the requirements of achieving the outcome of that roadmap. And, so I think it's really important. Where are we going as a business? How is process improvement important to achieving our goal for where we want to go? How do we take people on that journey? Is technology involved on that roadmap? All of that sort of stuff.
One of the first few questions I ask of business owners is, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years' time? Because that'll tell you whether they want to grow or whether they just want an easier business that they can go on the beach with. And the approaches are so very, very different.
Yeah.
I mean, you might invest more in a growth, whereas you might just want to cut costs and do something a little bit cheaper on the small lifestyle business side.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people get confused between growth and scale, right? It's you've got growth, but you can expand your workforce at the same rate as your revenue. That's growth, but that's not scaling. Scaling is throwing less resources at more revenue.
Yes.
So it's how much more profit. How can we expand that profit percentage allocation every quarter? That growth and scaling are two different things that you need to consider.
I think like different businesses, and there's benchmarks for this, but different businesses have different percentages of wage cost, as an example.
Yep.
And you might have very sort of personal based business might have like a 50% or 40% workforce cost.
Yep.
But then you get businesses like, I think Yelp, they're like ridiculous. They've only got a 4% human resource cost. And
wow.
So I don't know what the rest goes into, whether it's infrastructure or just really ridiculous profit margins, and I'm presuming a fair bit of marketing. But because they've leveraged it up with scale, they've basically made a self-service user-generated content engine that has, that's sort of changed a little bit now, but that was a stat that they put out about their sort of leveraged effect of not having to pay that much in headcount.
Yeah.
So
and why is that, Avon? Is it because they adopted technology and got rid of the boring stuff? Or
well, quite possibly. That self-service model that businesses that are digitally optimized grow 5 times faster. That's been proven time and time again. In fact, the more you invest in tech, the more you've got the capacity. And that's a double-edged sword, because you might spend money on a bad project that's not well thought out, or processes that are dumb. So first things first is planning, and then build the right product that's going to last and scale, and not have to rip and replace in 5 minutes later because something's changed.
Exactly.
Which brings us on to our last point of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
So we've got a plan. We've built a roadmap. We've built out our foundations. We're all about good foundations. And now we've got at least a starting point of something beautiful. But then we've now got things that we have to do to improve along the way. What are some of the continuous improvement strategies that you use?
Yeah, so I like to chunk things down as small as possible, and I like to eliminate dependencies wherever possible. I find, with these really large implementations, you have dependencies like nothing else. And it can be really quite hard to manage, and that's why you have like whole frameworks dedicated to dependency management, like SAFe.
Particularly on like software stuff where people go, I want a button, and they're like, okay, great. So we go, yeah, let's make a button. Oh, can you make it green? Like, all right, we're gonna make it green. Actually, can we change the font? Can we make it shaded and a little bit rounded on the corners? And then, like, what was a 5-second operation, which was probably coded in at the start, is now a 15-minute exercise. But just the scaling of that one button, now do that across 100 different elements on the screen across 50 different screens.
Yes.
Or people go, I want to, and then people are hard to quantify the value of what they've seen or what was built, because imagine a 3-button process. So on 3 different screens, you're going to see 3 different buttons, but that then requires 27 possible outcomes that need to be built. So when people go and use the thing and go, click, 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 well, that was easy. What took you so long?
Yeah.
Well, we had to build all the possibilities.
And it's and at that point, when you're building like repeatable things like that, you're building an internal framework, right? You don't want to have to create the button from scratch every single time, right? You want to be able to have like a reference object that you can bring on and then just configure, stuff like that. And that is important from a development continuous improvement, right? That's part of the process of managing process. You want to try to narrow that down.
Yeah.
But in terms of like your change, the benefits that I put towards my customers are really small. You can do them within 1 or 2 weeks. It's really small changes. Like, let's do this. This is how much it's worth. Just do it. Just implement it. Just get it. What's the next one? Really small ones each and every time. And I think, it does help having a technology platform that allows you the flexibility to go, something that grows with you rather than something that, I have to invest, 7 figures on an implementation. And you don't want to have to do that. You want to start small and you want to just transition work to it over time. That's not dependent on other things. That's why I love, sitting in workflow engines is you can actually, filter work in and out of different places, but have like a central task management place, right? Okay. First thing is, well, we've got tasks. And this task doesn't do anything, but all it's telling you now is that you need to do the thing that you know how to do. Now, what's the knowledge around doing that task? Now let's build a part of the database that will actually allow us to input stuff on that task. It's building up over time. It's not something that you implement all at once. It's something that implements over time.
I know that, like quite often we talk to business owners and they're like, oh, we're so busy. We don't have time to implement this project that's going to make our life better. I call it too busy treating burns to put out the fire. So, you're just treating the next burn, the next burn, the next burn. And then next thing you know, you're not really ever anywhere forward. In fact, you've been so busy just, putting out fires that, or like counterintuitive, example, but you get the idea. They're too busy dealing with that issue rather than, solving the root cause. And to your point about, give them something small, I usually, start off with something might save them 5 minutes. And then that unlocks that 5 minutes to dedicate to unlocking the next 10 minutes, the next hour, the next 50 hours.
Yep, exactly.
And particularly when it's leveraged across a large team, that value becomes exponential.
Oh, it does. And that's exactly where it is, right? I mean, it adds up so quickly. When my numbers before and 20 staff up to 50 grand, it's the reason why it's 50 grand is because you're saving 20 people time.
Yeah. And then imagine 40 people, 50 people, 100 people. Exactly.
You do the math. It's relatively easy from that point, so
there's a stat by a professional service automation software for the larger companies. If you want to be able to quantify this, for a company with 100 staff like say, for example, 100 consultants that charge $200 an hour, a 1% improvement in billable hours utilization is $1 million.
Yep.
Easily. So
how do you make your people 1% more efficient?
Yeah. And it could be literally just, some little in-between task that you don't even think about. But like if you could just eradicate it, now you've got more time to actually do the actual work.
Do billable work.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly right. It's a no-brainer when you look at it that way. It's just that business owners aren't typically inclined to think that way, especially if they're, busy doing so many other things, So, what I usually do with customers is I do a small project up front to go, hey, let's just discover the product. Let me then show you what it's like to have eyes on how to do the next thing. Where we like the light touch approach. We don't like working full time in customers' places because people have jobs to do. They don't have time to engage with us, but they might have half a day a week where they can engage with us to make things better, to get more competent in their process and knowledge management.
Yeah. Now you have a free audit, I believe.
Yes.
Customers.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so this is really just to try to get a snapshot about process maturity within an organization. It's about, have we documented our things? Are we using our process models and things to make decisions? Do we have an operating model in place? all that sort of stuff. So you can do that for free. It takes you about 7 minutes, and you'll have it in your inbox in about 10 minutes. Just sort of, it will give you it's just basically a health check about where your processes are at. And if you find that useful, you can come and talk to me. You can find me on our website, actionadvisory.com.au. And I just want to be helpful to people. So,
well, it sounds like it's an easy first step. So, well, it's been absolutely amazing chatting to you today, and I want to thank you for coming along and sharing your wisdom with us. So, if you want to find out about more about improving your processes, you can go to actionadvisory.com.au, and don't forget to check out the process audit. The link will be in the LinkedIn post and the comments after this. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. If you have any questions or you'd like to be on the show, check out relevate.com.au. Otherwise, thanks for coming, and take care until next time. See you later.
Thank you. See ya.